Hey, David.
Hi, David. It's got headphones. So volume control.
You hear me fine?
Hi, David. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. I see little dots indicating that my microphone.
We cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me.
Is my volume on?
I see the little green dots.
My volume's not on.
The green dots.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Excellent.
Can you hear us?
No, I can't hear you at all. I was reading your lips.
Be serious. Can you? I can't tell if David's serious or not.
David is a very good poker face.
What's one less higher than how many I'm holding?
You hear me fine?
Hi, David.
I hear you.
Oh.
I see little dots indicating that my microphone.
We cannot hear you.
You cannot hear me. I'm hearing some recorded playback. What's up with that?
It's not on.
The green dots. We can hear you.
It's like the best of sound.
Can you hear us? No, I can't hear you at all. I was reading your lips.
Be serious. Can you? I can't tell if David's serious or not.
David is a very good poker face. What's one higher than how many I'm holding? You hear me fine?
We were watching that was us watching. All right.
Okay, so you guys were obviously listening to a recording of some kind.
Yes,
Right.
ourselves.
Like in the tab over, there was it playing the conversation so far.
Got it.
Don't video of us.
It wasn't just it wasn't feedback per se. It was just open another tab. All right.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. Yourselves?
Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin is our happy new addition.
Yeah, I didn't see your name in the list. I was quite surprised to see you. Shocked even. Is it just the three of us?
Ginny or Gia?
Yeah, maybe we can re-invite her.
You are unfrozen.
Hey, we're unfrozen.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm here, David, as a last-minute replacement. Jim Dooley had a family emergency.
Okay.
I was talking about coming and visiting for a day, and it just all worked out.
Great. Excellent. I am not unhappy to see the two of you that I'm working with. I'm not unhappy. That's a double negative. I'm happy to see you. My son's giving me a hard time. Hi, Suzanne.
You are now.
Hi.
I'm on the internet.
My son has started giving people a hard time when they use double negatives. Mom, that was a double negative. So I'm acutely aware when I do it myself.
Oh, that's interesting.
So why are you interested in this, David?
So this is really interesting. My understanding is that there is some aspect of this work that involves categorizing student work. So looking at the student work and trying to figure out what strategy the kid is trying and then keeping track of that strategy. It turns out that totally separately, I am attempting to do the same thing as part of our project, which is to get not just me doing this, but all 170 teachers in our project at the beginning of a unit, looking at the student work from the class and aggregating the different strategies they tried in a spreadsheet that then gives them a sort of a summary of what approaches, what the sort of distribution of approaches kids tried were, and then gives them some ideas for next steps. And it turns out that the next steps portion is the thing they've been really finding challenging. I'll share a spreadsheet with you that, just so you can see what it looks like. Anyway, my tool is far more crude than what you guys are providing.
And so once the strategies are compiled for a given task, um, is that happening at the single teacher level, or is it being compiled across many teachers? And if
That's a
and like, what's the goal of compiling that information?
So I actually, although there is some suggestion we might try to aggregate back the sort of like individual classroom level, I don't particularly have any interest in that. Although maybe it's interesting from like a program level to get that data. I don't know what we would do with it. What I mostly noticed is that we had teachers scoring, so they would look at a rubric and create a number that represented the student work, and then they would get a summary of that scores, and then they would have to translate that back into next steps. And my observation is basically we're asking them to compress the information down to a very small amount and then uncompress it afterward. And my purpose in getting teachers to look at the strategies is to keep the band of information as wide as possible until the decision making. Essentially, the process of looking at the work and doing the aggregation gets them to look at every student's, what are they actually trying to do, make sense of that, and then come to some sort of like a tool that helps them sort of aggregate their findings.
So tell me if I'm hearing you right. So that sounds like using it as the tool.
I'm missing the words you're saying right now. I can't. You guys are froze again. You were froze it.
How about now?
Now it's better. Yeah, just start it in again.
Say everything.
Can you hear us now, David?
I can hear you now. Say everything you said again.
Sure. So it sounds like then that the goal of doing the process you described for an individual teacher is for them to have the experience of sorting the student work, and that being a reflective practice in helping them to look at student work in a different way, rather than just, is this right or is this wrong, and getting that kind of feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I've tested.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Totally does. And I've tested this.
Rather than trying to aggregate the data across large.
There you go.
Hi, we're back.
Yeah. So you were saying rather than try to like use the large amount of data, I'm not super clear that that's really very helpful at all.
Right.
At least, I mean, it might be helpful for like further research into how students come to understand certain mathematics, but we would never be able to analyze it in a time frame that would make it useful to turn around to teachers. So, you know, maybe aggregating would be interesting as like a research study of some kind for the future, but that's not my main purpose.
Right. That is, yeah. If I had to locate where the benefit is happening, the benefit is not directly to students or directly to the community of teachers, but rather to the individual teacher themselves.
Yeah, it does have a benefit in terms of community because we do another process called strategic inquiry, where the objective is for teachers to use some kind of evidence to make decisions about instructional decisions. And so this is a type of evidence they could use to inform that. Oh, I mean, for example, just to give two classrooms as a perspective, I took 2 classrooms, one from a group of kids that performed very well.
I'm out for 1 second.
Yeah.
Awesome. These are almost brand new.
I'm going to get a power cord myself. Just a second, okay? You guys, Justin, if you guys are interested, I put a link in. I'll copy it again. This is just an example of what the spreadsheet looks like. And then, if you need help understanding what the hell that means, an example of the task. I'm just going to be a second. I realize that my power is going to run out before our meeting does, so I'll be a second.
Okay. I know exactly what all this means.
I'm still not getting it, the goal. What do you see?
For the thing that he was describing?
Yeah, what is David's goal? I'm not seeing it. So 170 teachers to see the strategies for themselves to do what? To do what with it?
I think maybe, so the way that I've been thinking about
what do you
this,
see?
and then thinking about this, thinking about who the benefit is for, if those categories make sense, where like, here is a structure that's going to give me different kind of feedback to students, and so it's for their benefit. And then there's using some practice that changes the way a teacher thinks about student work, right? And then there's going beyond a single teacher to having community teachers having a certain kind of discourse. So the work that David and his crew are doing with lots of teachers is being like, hey, the work that your framework for thinking, for like how you're teaching math needs to change because Common Core and etc. Right? So the kinds of tasks kids are going to be doing, there has to be thinking, and there's got to be explaining work.
So this is how you can reflect on kids' work. Focus on the strategies that they're doing, right? I'm one of David's teachers. I said, imagine I'm one of David's teachers. What am I getting out of this? So he's trying to look at what EnCoMPAWS is doing with the feedback we're doing, the I notice, I wonder. He takes it back to the teachers and say, okay, yeah, now the Common Core is here, you need to look at kids' work differently. And by differently, you're looking for strategies, not right or wrong, but something along that line in terms of just how to look at kids' work, how to give them feedback. Because I think that's what we're trying to do. How to look at kids' back, how to highlight, and collaborate with other teachers about problem solving. That's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing here seemed like the thing you were just saying at the end of that, and something that he was saying toward the end is right that since all of these teachers are doing the same kind of thing, that it promotes a kind of peer-to-peer interaction because you have some common language and some common practice. But doesn't sound like that's the primary focus, where it's not like, oh, we're all going to do this so that we can talk to each other together, but more of, this is something that's going to be great for all of you to do. And as a consequence, you are going to have some common language that you can use together. But the most important thing is, hey, you teacher, I want you to be thinking about math in this way. And so as the people who's guiding this professional for us, you should be doing stuff like this.
All right.
I don't know how much of that is me hearing what he's saying and how much of it is.
Justin, having just listened into everything you said, I think you described a lot of what we're thinking, which is great. So I'm glad that that's coming across. Where we did make a deliberate choice is we asked all the teachers to use the same common assessments or the same sort of set of standards portioned into units. And that was not necessarily because, I mean, there is some theory that says that this is a sensible way to do this course, but the primary reason was so that it would facilitate the conversations. This structure, as you're describing it, where they're looking at the work and that's a separate structure from the units itself, and it is mostly for the individual teachers to learn from the student work. It's and my observation is that I've tried this now with 4 instructional specialists and 5 teachers. And every single one of them I don't know how to describe it, let's say mind blown on the difference that this was between grading, right? Between looking for right or wrong answers. Even though occasionally they're looking for answers because of the nature of the tasks, the structure of actually looking for all of the ways kids are trying things totally changed the way they were looking at the assessment task. Which, to me, that's great. Yay! And that we're continuing to use the more familiar process of scoring at the end of the unit, mostly because that fits better into the structures of schools where they're supposed to get kids grades, etc. And we think that where we can help support that is, allowing them to find ways to translate scoring into grades. And I'm not super thrilled about that, but I can't imagine tackling the larger problem of the power structures in schools and how feedback is given to students within the scope of our project, and this sort of allows us to fit in. And we did scoring for 2 years. The teachers are fairly familiar with scoring, and clearly they need more practice with it based on my looking at some of the work they've done. But it's not so, it's a familiar process they've got. This process here of doing the categorization, I'm super interested to see how Max has set this up. A few days ago, I guess last week, I shared with Max what I was working on. I guess via email or something, I don't know, or via Twitter, and he asked me to email him, and it was really interesting to see how much alignment there was in the sort of the structures we've seen. I have yet to read about anybody else besides Max who is doing this, let's say, so deliberately. There are lots of people looking at student work, not very many people
thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Right? Every teacher.
Yeah,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, they're looking at student work, but usually without a protocol, or a protocol that is actually not very useful. The grading protocol, is this right or wrong? And so in terms of looking at student strategies, that's something people have definitely tried, but I don't know about that being the process of grading. So you guys know the Silicon Valley Math Initiative?
I do actually. That's what put together the Mars that we went to, David.
Yes, that's right.
They're the same people.
Yes. So they have some protocols that they give teachers to do after they've done scoring that ask them to try to figure out what are the most common strategies. What do you think the most common conceptions and misconceptions kids had while they were trying to do this? All of which is way harder to do when you've been looking for correctness. When you've been looking for matching.
I think the Math Forum, and I think that's why I've been with them for many, many years, way before I got online to do anything. Math Forum, because they have that student feedback so focused. That is what they do, and they share the student feedback. With every problem, they have the kids' feature strategies. The kids' age next to the name, and yeah, that's the kind of feedback that they've always. So yeah, their heart is in it, and that's what I love about.
Yeah. And last year, after a teacher spending a year scoring work, pretty much every teacher said, I don't know what to do once I'm finished scoring this work that I've done. I've looked at this initial task, and I have no idea how to do it. And some sort of like glaring examples we noticed. 2 years ago, we had a Pythagorean theorem unit, which I hate the way that's framed, but anyway, a Pythagorean theorem unit. And in most schools, at least 85% of kids demonstrated mastery of the Pythagorean theorem. They could use it backward and forward, no problem.
Can apply.
They can apply it even.
Okay.
It's one of the Mars tasks based on the Pythagorean theorem that asks kids to apply the theorem, to use it in simple contexts and more complex contexts. The kids could mostly do it. The response from teachers was to teach a unit as if the kids had never seen the Pythagorean theorem. Every single teacher retaught the Pythagorean theorem from scratch, armed with the knowledge that all of their kids had met standards on the scoring test.
So that was it was like the task was like a pre-assessment or like the starter for the unit, and then they just taught the same thing, even though they knew what their kids already knew, because they didn't know how to do, like, what else to do. It's time for the Pythagorean theorem unit, and they converted to the Pythagorean theorem, so I guess you just teach it again.
Yes, so they didn't, so two things. One, they didn't, I think partially they didn't know how to read the data very well, and didn't believe us when we said, you know, your objective is not necessarily, you teaching the theorem in the same way you did before is not necessarily going to catch those last 15% of kids, because probably you're going to do it very similarly to how it's been done, right? That's one. And two, I think they didn't really they don't have the, they're still developing their data literacy skills to recognize that certain types of information could be used to make conclusions. And third, they didn't have a backup plan, right? So having planned a Pythagorean theorem unit and then given this pre-assessment task at the beginning of a planned unit, I don't know that they had a, oh, well, this is the wrong plan, and then how do I transform my plan? Frozen again. Oh, there you're back. So we're waiting for something else to happen. Is that true?
We have an agenda that we have been ignoring so far, so maybe we should look at it.
Okay, I just wanted to.
But they're going to walk us through the agenda.
So we have familiarized ourselves. We should talk about. We don't really need to do introductions.
Yeah.
No.
We all know each other. And then the third 10 minutes, as a group, talk about some goals you have for getting students writing in your class and some goals you have for getting them solving non-routine word problems, share things you've tried and accomplished you've had, as well as struggles and wonderings. David, have you used Problem of the Week from Math Forum?
I have never used it.
You're missing out. Oh yeah, that's.
I know I am.
Yeah.
I also have not. I've seen things from the website, but St. Anne's had their own Problem of the Week, so like I use that.
Yeah.
I help to write it sometimes.
I taught outside the U.S. system for all but the first 3 years of my career, and so never considered the resources that sort of came out of the United States. This is obviously a cultural bias of mine, but I, just didn't consider them. I used Canadian resources where possible, or things I wrote myself. Now, we're ready to go back in time and start this process over again with the knowledge I have now. I'm pretty sure that there would be resources from the Math Forum that would enter my classroom on a regular basis, such as the Problem of the Week. But I am post-warned with knowledge rather than forewarned. I did lots of problems. We did lots of problem-solving activities, so I can talk to that specifically if it's not the problems of the week. I'll take 2 minutes to describe mine, and then we can each take 2 minutes. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I think there's a tendency to let the person who's on the screen talk more. I'm going to try to counteract that. So 2-minute summary. Oh, 1 second.
Only David is here. Did Matt say he's going to join us? What did he just say?
He said that he's going to call Jan to see it. All right, give us your 2-minute problem solving spiel.
Okay, so in the math, in the middle years assessment framework, there's a requirement for students to investigate patterns and communicate and evaluate their work, which is all much different than the usual either right or wrong that also is included in the NYP framework. So as a result of that, there's a necessity to give students opportunities to work on problem-solving activities. However, I never use someone else's resource. I would usually develop them from whatever mathematical background that I have. For example, one task that we had to work with students was to, you guys know the frog jumping problem, where the frogs are jumping over each other. So I would give that. Yeah, I would give that. It's stepping stones, I think it's called. Yeah, I would give that problem to kids, and then the objective for them was to try to generalize it as much as they could from the specific 3x3 case that they start with to, you know, the more interesting n by n cases, or n by m. And then I felt myself that I was like the facilitator slash guide as they were working through that. Not to say there weren't lots of times when I was like leading the class down some specific direction, but that these problem-solving activities, the goal was for me to help them develop their communication of what they were doing as an explicit thing to do. Anyway, that's my 2 minutes. One of you want to go next?
So I've been doing problem solving since I've been teaching. So I mean math. So it's been 9 years in the math forum. I actually took an online. That's how Suzanne remembers me. I took an online problem solving for teachers. So yeah, and just been part. It's so part of what I do. So kids do it every week. Get assigned a problem a week, and with the online one, that we're doing it every other week. So they do a hard copy, and just time-wise. So the online, I'm hoping some of the math forum people get to see that what they do. But the hard copies, so every other week I grade, not grade, but I look at their work, and they just get credit for it. And I'm trying. I went from the I notice, I wonder. So we started problem solving, trying to incorporate I notice, I wonder. It's just like we're doing with a lot of other things. So we started in class.
I think I struggle some with the phrase problem solving because I often don't know like what it's contrasted with. Like I guess what it would be contrasted with is like exercise completion or something. Those are the buckets that seem likely to me, but I feel like my classroom almost exclusively was kids figuring things out and communicating the things they were figured out on problems and sequences of problems that I introduced them to or that they wrote. So I was teaching in a weird place that, so it's a funny bit of discourse to be like, well, problem solving is a part of my classroom. We were just in a room doing math. I think that's mostly true. Like, I don't think that's like the nice fiction. And so it's like I don't know how I would talk with a teacher for whom that experience was very foreign. Like,
Welcome to my life.
Right.
Yeah, you are at you're at your school. There are no grades, correct?
Right. We're taught at St. Anne's there weren't grades, and so all feedback was qualitative. Have a conversation about it or scribble whatever. And
is Paul still there? No, Paul.
Paul's at a school in St. Louis. Like he gives grades.
Yeah.
All right. So all of these things, like the way that I think about the EnCoMPAWS, right, where it's like, oh, this is giving a different kind of feedback, or this is prompting teachers to perhaps give a different kind of feedback than they're used to giving on math tasks. But for me, it's like, well, that's the only kind of feedback. And so it's more of a
Can I tell you guys a secret?
All the secrets.
Do know this is live on the internet currently, so
yeah, that's fine.
I don't want everyone to know.
If I type it in,
it will
all right.
remain secret.
Let's put it this way. Maybe this will help. I recently
grades are dumb.
No. I recently started a parody account, let's say, on Twitter, with the objective of highlighting some of the rage that I feel occasionally in a more anonymous way about certain practices, let's say. And a consequence of that is that someone who engages in a very different style of math teaching has repeatedly engaged this account to ask questions like, well, what's the black line master for that? How do problems give kids feedback? That's ridiculous. This kind of stuff. It's been really interesting to see the exchange with somebody online who has mind-blowingly different understandings around mathematics teaching.
Can you say what the questions were? You cut out.
Okay. So I can read some of them actually. Anyway, the exchange has been really fascinating. They've been asking questions about, like, do you have a black line master for that? I think I shared like an example of like 50 randomly chosen multiple choice questions and said this is not useful. I believe I was more firm than that in my description, and they responded with, that looks like great for practice. And I thought, well, actually, my understanding of practice is that really, in order to practice, you need to be doing something that is deliberate, that is basically chosen by you, and in which you get pretty constant, appropriate feedback, and that none of the things, problems, none of those things are present in this thing. This is like kids filling in blanks, and the result at the end of it, learning the rule that if you have the symbol 10 and you put the symbol multiplication underneath it, and then next to that you put a single-digit number, and then there's a line drawn underneath, that the appropriate response is to repeat the symbol that was underneath the 10 on the right-hand side, slightly to the left, line it up underneath the 1, and then put a 0 there. And that actually this task does not even teach that at all. It only allows kids to show that they can do it or they cannot do it. I don't know. Anyway, so there was it was a really interesting exchange. And then I shared, you guys know PCMI, right? Obviously, PCMI. I shared PCMI problem set where you do problem 2 and then you do question 3, and if you get enough of the questions in 2 right and the number of questions in 3 right, you notice that question 2 and 3 are actually the same question, totally reframed in different ways. And a consequence of that is that it gives you some additional knowledge. I don't see Jean. Oh, she joined the chat. Where is she? There's Jean.
We have a black box at the bottom for her.
I see it. I see a new black box.
Yep.
All right. Well, we should introduce ourselves to Jean, etc.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Can you?
No.
Come on, Lanier. Look together.
You're being me right now, by the way. So
I know.
type, please. I can't type.
You can hear us?
Well, we should say things to make sure, like, we should continue talking, so that it
Can you hear us? There's lots of background noise.
I can hear you.
Yay, we can hear you.
We can hear you too.
Yay!
For some reason, I can't get my camera to work.
That's okay. As long as we can hear you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm currently a professor at Old Westbury, City College at Old Westbury. Prior to that, I taught for 21 years in California and have known, and since, 1999, I think, working with Teacher to Teacher.
Uh-huh.
And I'm new to higher ed since I just finished my doctorate last year. And I've been working with student teachers, and what I noticed was that whenever I could bring authentic student work, the discussions were much richer and the students were actually more engaged. So I was looking for different places where I could gather, expand in my collection of student work and to help them promote learning on the part of students. In addition to which, I want to use problems to help promote their learning of mathematics, because I discovered that most of my students have been very successful in memorizing mathematics, but they haven't really experienced learning mathematics as a common core, to put it very briefly.
Yeah, I call this the distinction between a linguistic understanding and an understanding of the ideas.
Yes, I agree.
Felt like I missed something
What's
between.
what's the distinction?
So
Or what are the two things that we're distinguishing?
I was cut out.
So I would say, rather than saying that there's this thing called memorizing mathematics and this thing called mathematics that I think of it as there's this set of symbols and language that we use to describe mathematics, and there's the mathematics itself. So we're not so much concerned with the mode that information gets inside the head, but more with what is actually known. So we're not getting into a fight about memorizing. I'm mostly curious to notice that kids can talk about ideas and not understand the ideas. You have language for things and not the things. And obviously there's variation between these two, but I've always found that fascinating.
Can you give an example?
So kids were doing this problem-solving task, which they did correctly, and I asked them how they did it, and they said, "Oh, we use the zero product property." I said, "That's really interesting. What's the zero product property?" "Oh, well, it's the property that lets us solve this problem." So in other words, they had a circular, right? They'd seen the problem, and they knew the words to say that were the appropriate solution to the problem. I said, "That's great. So how does this zero product property work?" Well, it's the thing that lets us solve these kind of problems. So that's good. Can you describe the zero product property without using the words zero, product, or property? No, they have no idea how to describe it without using that language. So that's a linguistic understanding of something that basically allows them to put in the right words to describe this thing without understanding where that comes from.
No. We're just chatting. Yeah.
Are we supposed to go on a scavenger hunt?
Sure.
We are allowed to.
Yeah.
We are allowed to. All right.
But we are.
I put the agenda in just so you can see it, which we're not following at this point.
Are the names of the 6 different series? Yeah, I know those. I should. I'm assuming that means the elementary, middle school. The foundation, yeah. And then those ones.
Sorry, is it Jean or Jeannie?
I haven't heard from Jeannie.
I haven't heard from recently.
Yeah, or she's muted. She's coming back though.
Okay, I see her now.
The full story is Jeannie, but it's spelled Jeannie.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Jeannie,
Jeannie.
what was when in your classroom when you were teaching young people? What was your experience with problem solving? That was something that we talked about before you arrived. Can you give us your blurb on what problem solving was like in your classroom, or what role that it played in your classroom?
It played a major role in my classroom, partly because I was involved in the development of a curriculum known as College Preparatory Mathematics, which came out of California. It's a problem-solving based curriculum, and so every day mathematics was talked in terms of what can we do to solve these problems, what can we do to communicate our ideas. So a lot of what students learned was around a collection of problems that promoted a certain, that I can't say promoted a certain understanding, but as much as afforded me the opportunity to probe them and get them to communicate what they understood about the different mathematical procedures and procedures that we talked about. It was very different from using problems of the week, per se, because the problems were designed and targeted towards particular mathematical ideas. Those problems of the week, nice opportunity, but I couldn't always control kids. So sort of a balance and problems are part of the curriculum.
I'm still on.
Jeannie, can you say something about your classroom?
My classroom?
Yeah.
I taught 9 through 12 in the Sacramento area. I'm not quite sure what you mean, what kind of information you want by when you say, what can I talk about my classroom?
Well, what else? I guess, right?
Oh, sorry, like in your classroom practice, like in the activities that were happening in your classroom, if you were to categorize some of them as problem solving, what are the other categories that you would have in mind for the stuff that your students were doing? If you have language for that.
Be typing this in.
It's too broad for me to think of right now.
Okay, that's right.
So I just linked the scenario that's from the that's suggested in the agenda. Submit to the current fun POW. Check your answer. This is just the scenario. It doesn't actually have the questions. Maybe it'd be interesting to look at this and see what questions we can come up with.
Sure.
So I know that X
Needs to be on a visual pattern website.
That's where it felt like it comes from for me too.
I noticed these two people are crowded elbows in, right? The bears are
Bears are like big,
yeah.
like,
So these people have more space, I noticed, and I don't know about these two people. They're the svelte bear.
I noticed it would be really interesting to come up with different arrangements and try to generalize on different kinds of arrangements for this. That not just this arrangement, but also other variations of hexagons. Because they tessellate, right?
Would you think be appropriate?
Sorry, I missed that last.
Oh, just what grade level is suggested for this problem?
I'm looking at the thing. There's a teacher's pack. I guess it'll be in the teacher pack. Here, I'll link the teacher pack so you can read it if you're interested.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just asking us what, just our opinion.
Oh, our opinion?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it really depends on what the questions are. It seems to me that depending on how you arrange it, you could ask a lot of different questions about this, and it'd be appropriate for a lot of different grade levels. That's part of the point of these problems, though, isn't it, right? They have access for kids at a wide range.
Yep.
there's also the difference between giving the scenario and giving the scenario with questions.
Or just models.
The amount of direction.
Yeah. I'm just thinking if the kids had these pieces, actually physical pieces to play around with, that I'm assuming we can start younger if they can manipulate.
Yeah, I mean, what patterns would they notice? When you add a new hexagon, can they come up with a pattern that suggests how many new bears are able to fit at the table? You know, it doesn't matter where the
you know, how do you add that third table? Yeah.
Yeah, it might even just be noticing
Yeah.
how they can add the table on. You know, what are the ways the hexagons fit together?
Like, how can you just add that third table? I'd be interested in how kids fit that third one in.
Right. And there are questions like, how many ways are there to
Exactly.
add a third table?
Yeah.
And then we can look at rotations. I mean, when a kid says, "Well, I put it here and I put it there," well, you know, are they the same? If we were to flip it somehow or rotate it somehow, just get that conversation going. That's all.
Yeah.
And then you're classifying trihexes, right? Like fixed versus fixed versus floating trihexes.
Right.
Like
And yeah, right. And classification is one of the big ideas of mathematics, right?
Right.
So right away you're diving into a fairly broad, big picture idea. I think is super cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is as a jump, like, I would feel, the youngest I've taught is 5th grade, right? I would feel very comfortable bringing this into a 5th grade class as is and letting them tackle that. I can see walking into an algebra class doing like linear functions and being perfectly happy with them working on that, and then thinking about extensions like, great, you very quickly got to whatever it is, right? 5n plus, because every table we add on is going to add 5 people, so 5n plus 5. No.
5n plus 1. 5n plus 1 if n is the number of tables.
Yeah.
If you look at the first a single hexagon.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, because it's not 5n plus 1.
For step 2. So it's.
No, that's true, eh? More complicated than that. I guess we need to actually work out the table. I want to work on more.
So if the third table, let's put the third table in. Yeah. So let's put the third table, assuming along one row.
Yeah.
That is stressed in the problem, a long row. So when we remove it, we get to, that one's gone. But we get to add 5 more people.
Right.
Yeah. So we have 10 minus 1, so we have 9 plus 5. Now at 14. How many do you have for 3 tables?
So that's really interesting. I think it's actually, I've got this arrangement. 1 is 6, 2 is 10, 3 is 14. So I think it's 4n plus 2.
Yeah. Because the ones on the ends stay fixed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You're not adding things on the ends. You're getting 4 new seats each time.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
4n plus 6. Yay, we did it.
Okay. So, and then having the kids say, where do you see that plus 2?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Where do you see the plus 2?
Where is the 4n?
Where's the 4? Where's the 4? Where's the 2?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing that I would, like, after that conversation, the thing I'd want to do with Algebra 1 kids is, like, design some tables that do 5n plus 3, or 5n plus 2, or, you know, things like that. That would be a lot of fun.
I noticed that the one table in our sketch is oriented differently than the 2 that are put together. It's just wondering, kids, if they can see, oh, is that the same? Yeah. You can see that?
Say that again.
The single table in the problem, David,
Yeah.
it's just the orientation is different than the 2 that are put together,
Interesting.
right?
So how does that impact?
Well, it doesn't, I mean, but...
Right.
but
No,
just
actually, I wonder if it does.
Yeah.
I wonder if it does impact.
I don't think it,
I wonder, you don't think it does?
Like students,
well, where students are sitting.
the
but
psychology or the mathematical outcome?
Well, I mean, obviously it
wonder
doesn't
if
affect the
kids would put-
mathematics, but it might impact how students view the 2 tables.
Right. If they start here and they were told to put another table, they're like, wait, I'm not getting this configuration.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just interesting how this was drawn differently.
Jean, do you have any thoughts on this problem?
About it in terms of, I think in terms of manipulative. So I was thinking, for every hexagon you add, we'll start with 1, we still have 6. You put a second hexagonal table in a row. I was thinking 6 times 2, that's 2 tables worth of people, but we have to compensate because it's clear and edge that 2 people can't put down.
Yeah.
So when it goes to 3, I have 3 tables, 3 times 6, but then we have 2 shared edges, so 4 people can put down.
Right. So the expression for Jean's thinking. Yeah.
I'm thinking in terms of compensation, basically. So what I'm getting is the number of tables and minus the number of shared edges, which is the number of tables minus 1 times 2 people. I kind of like the numbers to be into the context.
Right. 2, right? 2 times.
I'm trying to lost her again.
You froze it. Oh.
They weren't really reflective about it.
So what about the other groups? So just we're all kind of losing pieces like that with the others.
Are we still live for you, David?
Yeah, you are. You are. I don't. Jean's mic's. She's muted.
Wait, David, your background's different. It's like you just went to some factory.
Well, yes, it does feel like a factory. Hi, Jean.
Hey!
Hey!
We can see you.
What's up to work?
Hi, Jeannie.
Jeannie.
Yay!
Nice to see you. No, I had to move to my desk
Where-
when I was in.
Where are you, Jeannie? Where are you at? Jeannie, where are you at?
I'm in my office at the college. It's SUNY Old Westbury on Long Island.
Did we ever
Anyway, I'm wondering if what I described made sense, because I was doing it
Yeah.
mentally. I haven't made a chance to write anything down.
We are really talking about
What I heard sounded like it made sense. I'm going to try to type more and talk less. Do you guys want to think about these reflective questions that have been offered?
Yeah.
Paste them into the thing.
Are these the table reflection?
Yeah, these are the final reflective questions.
Now we're losing work.
I can hear you.
Should we type this in?
What were the main goals or benefits?
Of what?
Of the problems of the week, I guess.
Oh, I thought it was more for specifically our session.
That's what I asked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe not.
I don't know what the importance is this environment. Maybe it's encompassed in general. Maybe you'll need to ask for clarification.
Yeah, I think maybe it's all just theoretic. Like the environment of the problem.
But then at the same time, we don't do the scavenger hunt unless we have time. If you do finish this early, then we do this. So if we never touch this, it's a table reflection based on the session that we're having, or EnCoMPAWSOME?
This session. So your hangout session.
Like, what were the main goals of this particular conversation? And what were the benefits of this particular conversation? Okay.
So can you read Max's mind?
Oh, we knew that.
Yeah.
So,
Should we start typing?
yeah, I was going to say my thoughts very briefly. I was going to say my thoughts were that it allows us to introduce ourselves, allows us to sort of think of the technical hurdles.
Period.
Have a discussion about mathematics and what it means to us, problem solving. So it's like a norming process.
It's a typing.
Structure for kids to be in a productive, right? So it's grappling in a productive way. It's not just pissed off, right?
Do you think they start out?
Hey, Jeannie,
Yes.
how did you hear about this thing that we're doing right now?
We asked David.
I'm in the middle of writing a huge report for accreditation purposes, and one of the standards is that we have to address is providing feedback to students and having students what's the impact on student learning. And I really wanted my student teachers to begin thinking in terms of live students, not hypothetical students. And so I was looking for student work. I have a collection from when I taught in California, but that's not enough. So I contacted Suzanne Alejandre to see with respect to problems of the week. The documents that you have there offer some nice solutions, but I wanted a broader range. So after some conversation, I said, why don't you join me? We're trying to get some educators not only in the K-12 system, but in higher ed as well. So here I am.
Yeah, cool. It's really funny to think, so like classroom teachers are, you know, we drown in student work, right? Like something I say to my students is like, you guys can produce mathematics far quicker than I can process it, right? And like every teacher is in that circumstance. And so the interesting thing is, or Jeannie, something that I'm taking away from this conversation is that pre-service teachers have very much a lack of the thing that in-service teachers have an abundance of, which is like student work to chew on. And that's an interesting problem.
They're wonderful in working with hypothetical students, except that they only know students that they went to school with. And by virtue of the fact that they're in college, they're probably in the top 10% of their graduating class, so they have no sense of the range of interpretations for a problem in a context. So I wanted to have a broader range collection of problems than I do have right now.
That's super interesting. Do we have any other thoughts on the other goals of this work together? Like, I don't know what Fawn and Justin's ideas. What are their goals?
To know how to use the software. How can we use the software to interact more with the kids' work?
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts? That's it? You just want to know how to use the software?
And collaboration. I mean, yeah.
Can you state the question again, David?
I was just curious. I've described my goals. Jeannie's described her goals, but I don't know your goals.
Yeah. My goals are, I guess, to reflect on how teachers look at student work. Grow as mathematical thinkers, and having teachers look at student work in new ways to change the way that they think about what it means to do mathematics.
Yeah.
Which feels like a foreign conversation to me, because I'm not used to talking to people
Very
who
non-traditional.
don't know how to talk, like who have a hard time looking at student work and just seeing right or wrong. Like, what a strange filter to put on thinking. Like, to lose all of that texture.
Jeannie, how have your student teachers approached that?
They have a hard time wrapping their head around.
Have you shown them student work yet?
Yes, I have. And some of them are appalled by some of the things that they do. For example, the one that they talked about the most is a student, I think it was a sophomore, I think, applying the Pythagorean theorem to the angles of a right triangle.
Uh-huh. Yep.
They didn't think that was even something that a student would do, because they've not seen it amongst. I mean, they know that it has to do with size. They're also impressed by some of the creativity that some of the student work has shown, and they've also been impressed about the flexibility and thinking that some of the student work demonstrate. That is so different from their own. They don't know how to wrap their head around what that means and what mathematics is about.
Understood. Interesting. So any other thoughts about this environment? It seems to me that it's useful for us if we have a bit more structure, either following an agenda more closely or tasked with doing things. Conversation's been interesting, but I wonder also if there are
The technical difficulties, I mean, yeah. People cutting out, that's hard. To have continuity.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I find being in a room full of people doing this distracting. So it's probably harder for you than it is for me.
That too. Very true. Look what we're doing. We're taps.
I see that. Somebody walked past my desk.
Unfortunately, I think I only caught half of what Jeannie has said. Jeannie looks frozen right now. No? No. She's talking.
I just shook my head. Did you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Especially now that you pointed it out verbally.
What are our goals?
Goals.
I'm not sure what you heard, so I don't know how to respond.
No, you said this problem. That was
I honestly had a hard time, like the document that we have over here with all the things we're supposed to do, trying to do that and also have a conversation. Like,
because we know, I mean, this whole disconnect, it's just not working. It's really difficult. I really did not hear a lot of the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, getting disconnected a lot is hurtful. I also noticed that in all of our team meetings that we do with teachers, at the top of the agenda, there's a what are the goals of this agenda? Like, what are the goals that get communicated by this agenda? And I find that really useful. So maybe when we start the afternoon session, we can start with what are we hoping to get out of what we're doing together? So then it helps us keep track of the thread.
No, I agree.
How familiar are we with the problem of the weak website?
I have looked through it.
I've used it. Very familiar.
So we have very familiar, very unfamiliar. Although the problems
Unless they completely change it this summer.
the problems of the week
I'm glancing
pretty familiar.
Sure. Right. Jeannie, what's your experience with the problem of the weak website?
I have very little experience with it, except for exploring what was available as I was going to prepare some assessments for this accreditation report that I'm writing.
Yeah.
But it is very user-friendly and easy to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that so far as well, yes.
Yeah.
Where is the...
So this is one student.
Okay, well, stuff.
I have a phone call. I have to pause. I'm going to mute myself. Pretty good. True. So I worked with John. He was at a school. He was working at a school where I was working with a team of math teachers at the school to run or facilitate team meetings once a week. In that context, he was in those meetings every week, and I also got to observe him teaching a couple of times. He was very professional. He was interested in what we were doing in the meetings, and he attentive. And from it looked like his classrooms were well prepared, that he'd clearly thought about what he was planning on doing.
Justin's using the bathroom.
Well, once you like start having I know my favorite is there's everything red. I don't think it's class. You can only get
However, I have no evidence.
So you get better.
But I'm also thinking about online. So kids can be working on a problem and they can get excited by the fact that countries are working on the same problem. And that actually is the validating the idea that the price of predicting stuff other people Right. Well, so that
I did 2 rounds.
Hey, just my earpiece partner.
Say again?
My earpiece partner. My ear.
What? Speak up.
Looks like David's on the phone.
Yeah, he's done a pretty good job of kind of continuing to stay connected all the time.
That's what she needs me right on.
No, no, I.
What? No, I.
I found very often that I have to explain something in a way that's
When I tried to do the offset,
this room
it's like a
would understand
never like
because you're
No, I didn't actually mute myself. You guys heard that whole.
Maybe you could.
I thought I muted myself.
Sorry.
Maybe you could do some of this for us.
Experience use, you can share some of their favorite features. Using screen sharing to share.
All right, just a reminder to everybody that you should be about starting the reflection piece that's at the bottom of that Google Doc where you've been scavenging. So it would be time to start that to make sure that you don't run out of time before we have to eat lunch. So,
but the fact that very often when we say things,
Sorry, I'm frustrated with this whole format. I can't hear half the time. So.
Yeah, no, it's annoying.
Yeah. How do you do screen sharing, by the way? Sorry.
You can do it. So I propose that Fawn gives us a guided tour of the POW website, and we will screen share it.
And I'm learning how to do screen share.
So we're gonna push this button.
Oh, the green button.
And now
my talking keys.
This.
Screen share.
Infinity. See our screen and the problem of the week website.
I can see it.
No, you do not see the problem.
How did you do that?
You see the problem of the week website whenever you instead of our faces?
Yes.
Do you, David?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
All right,
so as you can see, there are 6 different levels or 6 different types of POWs. I teach 6th graders, so I assign, not all the time, but my 6th graders mostly do from the math fundamentals, and then they'll do some pre-algebra ones. My 8th graders will do algebra and geometry. Yeah, so those are the 4 that I'm most familiar with. And I know trig and calculus were just added, I believe, just last year. So that's nice that we have an extra one there. And so we click on any one of them. Let's go with the Ducky Promenade. Yeah. So as you can see at the top in the blue box, lots and lots of resources for teacher. There's a teacher packet PDF that has not only the problem, it has the solutions of some sample solutions from students from previous years. Yeah, and as you can see, also has the strategy suggested, right? The guess and check for this, and yeah, but it's easy to navigate. When I go in like this, I go to my students' work, my kids didn't do this problem, but so I can go straight there, and I can assign, for example. So when I start out the year, I made a class list. So if I like this problem for my 6th graders, I can just click assign. And see, so these are my kids. Okay, so my 3rd period, 6th graders. They're seeing everything I'm showing.
Should.
Yeah. So it's my 5th period. My algebra and my geometry. So all I do is just click on the checkbox, and I can say, I can do that, and that's it. And I just hit submit, and pretty much they get it instantly.
And that gets emailed to them?
No, when they log in, no, they don't get an
I see.
email, but when they log into their account, they will see, oh, I have a new problem added. So these are all the problems that were assigned to my students this past year. Yeah. I actually wish that this was in a folder of some type, because once I start assigning over the time, it's just a lot to scroll through, you notice? Yeah, and it's not, I have to look carefully to see which one's algebra. See, there's no distinction between my algebra and my period math 6. So it's just all kind of one stream. So it'd be nice if these were different folders. Yeah. And
could you click one of the problems that they worked on?
Sure. So,
and then show us some student work?
Yeah. So well, looks like. So this one, I'm trying to find the date I assigned. So there's no date. Okay. So my students' work. And this was my geometry. So click here. Well, I don't want to pick, so you just randomly point to one, because I'd be biased.
Let's use Spencer.
Spencer Gravel. Okay. So this is Spencer's. Yeah, and they were, at the beginning of the year, I walked them through, in the answer part, you just really write the answer, and you wait for your explanation until under the explanation. Yeah. So here's Spencer. Yeah. And some of the kids, actually, I want to say about 30% of the kids will have images, especially in geometry. So they'll take a picture and then just submit it. So you would see the picture below here. And actually, Suzanne had sent me an email to say for the kids to just do crop just right into the picture, because sometimes they take a picture entire of the room, and the problem's really small. So it's just little features like that to tell the kids. Or sometimes they don't dress enough. And, put on some clothes. We just want to see the problem. So yeah, things I never thought about to tell the kids. And so I had to point that out to them. If they went back into the problem and to revise, we would see that too. And yeah, there's a thread history, meaning there were the feedbacks given.
Can you show the thread history?
Yeah, there isn't one. So there isn't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so there will be others. Yeah, let's find one that might have some threads. I noticed. Let me find Kylie. I know she has a long. Here's another. I want to know if I can click. Let's see, there's another. So the calendar shows me.
Are y'all still seeing our screen? Everything's going smoothly?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is where I begin to assign, because when Math Forum puts in, you notice it's entered by date. So when they throw in a new problem, that's when I go to. Yeah. So. Let's see. In the freezer. I'm trying to find another screen where I can just go to one kid's work and see all of his or her work. And not just for a particular problem. I want to do that.
So what happens if you get a little arrow, a little gray arrow, and then do view submitter work?
Yeah, it just shows this one particular work. I did that. This particular problems. Oh, I didn't see this
That's
earlier.
because it gave the fail screen.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah. So this is the student's work. Okay. And there's some threads here, peeling potatoes. This student came in to revise. So I want to see the.
Like you said, maybe a more professional sort of mission environment. Like take my thoughts and put them into the life.
I mean, just.
What are you trying to do?
I'm just trying to see the kids' work, the thread. I'm not seeing it.
For the peeling potatoes? Try going back. And then like.
I normally don't do this.
What happens if you did you already click that?
Yes.
Right. How do you maybe view and reply?
See that.
Right. So they just submitted an answer with no explanation.
Yeah. So this, right. And
then they added an explanation. They
figure out I took a photo because I don't know how to explain it because I used a number line.
You're welcome to work as long as you want, but the food is here, and you may eat it in 2 minutes, and your online buddies might have somewhere they need to be, who knows, but just so you know.
I guess we need to wrap up.
Is there anything that Jeannie or David that you would want us to click on or to show you on the website, or that you have a question about, that you have noticed or wondered?
Well, I appreciate you showing me this aspect of the website because I had no access to student work whatsoever. So, or giving me some information I didn't have, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my first time seeing the back end as well. Anything from you, David? Infinity!
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
I'm pointing my finger.
So,
Now it's just our faces.
yeah, you're taking notes. Thank you. That will probably help a little, okay?
So we're back at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
All right. Have a good lunch.
Thank you.
Well, actually, we're in the same time zone, are we all?
Oh, right.
It's
I'm
12
in New
p.m.
York.
here.
I'm the same time.
It's 12 p.m. here. My time.
Jeannie, where did you say you are?
I'm in New York. I'm Long Island.
Oh, we're all East Coast.
So we're all East Coast. Yeah.
Even though my watch says
Great.
9 a.m.
All right, we'll see y'all in about an hour.
See you about an hour.
Bye now.